I was a horse mad little girl, and so I love all horses. But honestly, I just find that the thoroughbreds, they're so kind. I think that's the big thing. They're kind. I honestly think they want to work with us. Like, they're there at the gate. I'm not a very good rider, and I go out to see these horses, and they come to the gate. You get on them, and they're just like, "What are we going to do today?" And they prick their ears, and they try. They really try to help you out. So I just think they're wonderful partners. Like, they're great friends.
For many people these days, their first connection with a thoroughbred is via the TV screen. The thunder of hooves, the colourful silks, the glamour of the crowd, the nail-biting finishes, the lifting of the trophy and the champagne celebrations. That's the celebrity life of Australia's $9 billion racing industry that everyone knows about. But racing isn't just about money and glamour. There's something about horses that humans at all levels of society connect to. Whether they're a punter, professional trainer, a show jumper, or just a little girl who wants a pony for Christmas. A winning thoroughbred is loved by all, but when the lights go out and the show leaves town, what becomes of that star performer? Where do those racehorses go when they get a little older and they lose that magic burst of acceleration? The question of finding the right post-racing career for thoroughbreds is at the heart of this episode of Unearthed, the AgriFutures podcast all about the people changing Australian agriculture. I'm Michael Thompson, and to get the story started, let's go back to where life begins on farm.
Thoroughbreds, from the time they are born and draw their first breath, are handled by humans. And so therefore their brains develop over a period of time to not only form an attachment to their mothers, to the mare, and to the other herd that they're with, but to always form an attachment with humans. And they have to know that they're safe. Like I said, they live in present awareness. So their main concern is that they're safe. So they identify humans as being safe when they're in that healthy relationship and being looked after and cared for by humans as well as their mother.
Lisa Coffey is the founder of Racing Hearts Therapies, a charity that retrains retired racehorses to support people with physical and psychological disabilities. She says this human interaction from the day of birth creates a special connection between thoroughbreds and people that's unlike any other breed of horse.
So other breeds often tend to have their foals born and they will be left on their mother until they're weaned at maybe 6 months, and then they might be left in a paddock with other young horses and not broken in or handled that much until they're 3 or 4, until they're a little bit older. Whereas thoroughbreds are handled, like I said, right from the day they're born. They go through usually yearling sales, then they go on and go through breaking and pre-training and then racing, and they see so much more than other breeds as well when they go through a racing prep. And again, they're in constant communication with humans, and I feel that because they've had that since birth and their brains have actually developed that way, that when they come to the point of retiring, they already have that really strong connection with humans.
But if there's such a strong human-thoroughbred bond, what's stopping more people from adopting a racehorse when it retires? At any given time, there are about 30,000 active racehorses in Australia, with about 6,000 retiring each year, and they all need a home to go to once they stop racing. AgriFutures Thoroughbreds Program Manager Caitlin Smith wants to know why people are reluctant to rehome a retired thoroughbred and what can be done to change those attitudes.
So it's looking at developing so that there's a survey that's heading out to industry participants, but also just horse owners in Australia. So capturing what the key sticking points are for retired thoroughbreds and why some may not be appropriate, or what the, I suppose, consensus is out there in other industries about retired thoroughbreds and how we might actually be able to break that stigma. And that's also captured with a series of interviews with key stakeholders to further emphasise those pain points or opportunities, and then also tying that in with data from Racing Australia in terms of retirement, what the key trends look like, what the age of horses are that retire. All those bits and pieces will then tie into a national strategy that will look at options that can be used, across Australia, not just in a state-by-state approach, to improving welfare outcomes for retired thoroughbreds in Australia. So, finding avenues for those horses, as long as they're healthy and sound, and they're appropriate for rehoming. I think that is the ultimate outcome for this, ensuring that as the Australian industry is sort of the leader leader in the world from a retired thoroughbreds perspective.
One post-racing career option is the placement of thoroughbreds with equine therapists, like Lisa Coffey, who we met earlier, where that special trust between human and horse can be just the support that a patient needs.
So there are different types of equine therapy, or a broader term is equine assisted services. And what we do is we engage registered mental health professionals, so psychologists or social workers, counsellors, as well as physios. And we work the horses into the sessions with the client in a way that's genuine and meaningful for them, or not just meaningful, but is actually effective in their healing journey, whether it's psychological or physical. So the sessions can look very much like a psychology session in a room, but we're outside in the paddocks with the horses, or the clients can also be on horseback.
So I can see how horse riding is a very physical sport, and it's great for strength and all sorts of things for the physical side of things. Why are horses beneficial for the emotional or the mental health side of things as well?
So what we're seeing in the research now, and I love that there's so much more research being done on this, is that when people are in contact with horses, their bodies naturally release those feel-good hormones like oxytocin, dopamine, and serotonin. So as a therapist in a room-based setting, we can't actually do that for the client. So to have the horses integrated into their sessions, it means that when the client is able to have access to that range of hormones in their body, it helps them relax a lot quicker. And with the horses, they tend to form a bond because of that non-judgmental relationship as well. So, we would definitely, as therapists, discourage our clients to bond with us and experience feelings of love or connection in that kind of a way, whereas we can encourage that with the horses.
So let's just describe what that relationship looks like. You said it's non-judgmental, but there's still a very strong bond there. Like, how does that relationship, what is the dynamic of that relationship between horse and patient?
So very often the clients that will come to us, and even people who don't go to therapy, people in everyday lives have challenges with other people and challenges with relationships. So whether that's at work, whether it's with family, whether it's with friends or a partner. So what we experience, what we see with the horses that's quite unique in terms of relationship is that, unlike humans, where we find it almost impossible to have a non-judgmental or an unconditional relationship with another human, horses have that ability to live in the present moment and live in present awareness with people. So their main concern is whether they're actually safe with the person or not. So because of that, they're able to form that non-judgmental relationship with the client based on whether they're safe with that particular person. And then because horses also act as mirrors of our patterns of behavior, how we are in relationship with other people or in groups or whatever the challenge that we're bringing to the session is, we can actually help people see what their patterns of behavior are and how they might actually be impacting their own relationships, or how they might be actually contributing to their own challenges as well. So therefore, we can actually bring about behavior change.
And even if someone has never been near a horse in their life, that connection between horse and human still shines through. When Lisa and her team introduce people in need of physical or psychological therapy, it is often the horse that chooses the patient and not the other way around.
We know the horses very intimately ourselves, but we know how the horses are with us. So we base our choice of horse to pair with a client on what we know about the horses and how the horses are with us. But quite often what we'll do is we will introduce the client to a whole range of horses. And interestingly, the horses often pick them. So there might be a horse that I would never consider matching with a client, but the client might be drawn to that particular horse for whatever reason, and that's not for us to judge. And the horse might also be drawn to that client as well. We've got one particular horse that I don't include him in therapy because he we started to include him in herd work, and anyone that tried to approach him, he would just walk away from them, and he just wasn't interested at all in having any kind of relationship with anyone.
There's
But
always one, isn't there? One in
there's
every.
always one, yeah. There's always one that makes a liar out of us. But what we actually found was, I actually deliberately started to integrate him for kids that were being bullied in school, because he would almost act out what was happening to them in a group situation. So the client would go into the group of horses, and this particular horse would just walk away, and that was the horse that always triggered the emotions for that particular child. So therefore, once we were able to get that I guess mirror that challenge, we would be able to encourage the client to talk about what was happening in school. And it was really profound that once we actually got them talking about what was happening within that bullying situation, and how, you know, the person, say for example, that replicated the horse was walking away from them, or ignoring them, or bullying them. Once we were able to help them regulate their nervous system and really process what was happening for them, that particular horse would come back.
You must have seen so many personal transformations as a result of that mysterious relationship.
Yeah, personal transformations and horse transformations, which is really beautiful to see, and especially when they come together. There's you know, over the 7 or 8 years that we've been doing this, there's definitely a few standouts that we've seen really profound changes in.
Yeah, give us an example.
We've one young boy who was in foster care, and he was 8. He had selective mutism, which meant that he could physically speak, but he, for whatever reason, chose not to. And usually it's from experienced trauma, the trauma that he had experienced in earlier years. And his parents hadn't heard him speak, his teachers hadn't heard him speak, but sorry, that he hadn't spoken to them, but they'd heard him speak to his teddy bears at night after school in his bedroom. So he came to us for equine therapy because his parents had looked into it and had seen some research articles that equine therapy had helped with selective mutism. We kind of started to go with what was already working. So he was already reading books to his teddy bears in his bedroom. So we thought we'd start with that because it was obviously something he was already comfortable with. So we started him reading books to the horses. But what we would do is the therapist would just move away to a safe spot where they were far enough away that that child felt safe, and felt safe with the horse, but they didn't have a person around. And gradually the therapist got a little bit closer. And we integrated lots of other exercises as well. We did a lot of ridden sessions with that child too, to help regulate his nervous system, and also to promote that relationship of safety and trust with the therapist as well, and the horse. And we had a school
This is
holiday
obviously
program.
going on over a fairly prolonged period.
Yeah, so this was over, it was over about a 4 to 6 month period. And then we had a school holiday program that his parents really wanted him to be involved in, towards the kind of 4 to 6 month mark. And we had a little relay race with the horses, and he was riding a horse called Lagerfeld that was trained by Kieran Marr. And he's a firm favourite at our practice. But he was riding that horse, and he got to the end of the finish line, and he crossed it first, and he won. And he threw his hands up in the air, and he just screamed, "I won this thing. Yay, I won." And everybody, all the adults, you know, all the kids were kind of shouting and laughing and things, and they didn't really understand the brevity of what had just happened. But all of the therapists, we all just stopped and looked at each other, and, you know, we're always encouraged to kind of bracket our emotions and continue on as normal and behave in a professional manner. And we were all fighting back tears and trying to carry on like nothing really amazing had just happened.
And so did that open the floodgates then?
Luckily someone had caught it on video, so we are on their phone, so we were able to give it to his parents as well, because they weren't there, or his foster parents weren't there on the day. But yeah, I mean, I definitely had a very, very big cry later. Yeah, there's stories like that, and, you know, that's a really huge barrier for that child to have crossed. His parents did come back to us. You know, we started to taper off his therapy then, because he became a little chatterbox. And his parents did bring him back for another school holiday program in the next school holidays the year after. And they said that he had, since that day, he just hadn't really stopped talking. But the one thing he always talked about was Lagerfeld the horse. And he was then obsessed with horses after that. So, you know, if there were pictures of horses racing on the newspaper, he would cut the pictures of the horses out and put them in his room. And he wanted books about horses, and all of his teddy bears had changed to horses. And so, you know, that really speaks to the relationship and his understanding of where the healing came from, because he didn't want pictures of his therapist. He didn't want pictures of anybody that was at the centre. He just wanted pictures of horses.
That's Lisa Coffey from Racing Hearts Therapies. Clearly, thoroughbreds are so much more than just racehorses, which is why people like Dr. Natasha Hamilton find it so frustrating to hear the thoroughbred-human relationship described in simplistic stereotypes. We heard Tash at the very start of the episode describing how she first fell in love with the kindness of thoroughbreds as a little girl. Today, she's the director of Racing Australia's Equine Genetics Research Centre.
The biggest misconception that I hear a lot is that the horses are basically treated like little robots that go out and do their job so that people can gamble on them, and that they're not loved, that they're not treated like pet horses might be. And nothing can really be further than the truth. With a racehorse, there's a huge investment, both financial but also emotional. So when a person breeds a racehorse, they put time and effort into choosing the right stallion for their mare. They then have to wait 11 months to see if they're going to even get a foal. And then when they do, the foal, takes nearly 2 years for it to be able to then either be sold or go and enter the racing industry. And I don't know how much experience you've had with foals, but in the industry, we call them time wasters because you could literally spend all day sitting out there watching them gamble around and have fun. And I just think it's really not possible to be able to do that without at least some emotional investment. And, the strappers that look after these horses day to day, they treat them like their children. So for me, I think that's quite hurtful, that people think we don't love our horses. And in fact, it costs an awful lot of money to have a horse in training. In New South Wales, it's between $50,000 and $70,000 for a horse, which is why most horses are owned by a group of people so that you don't have to pay all that money. But from that, less than half of horses will actually win a race every year. So if anyone is racing a horse expecting to make money, then they're doing it completely for the wrong reasons again. So the industry is not all about using horses to make lots of money. While there are some people who have been extremely lucky and have, owned horses that have won them a lot of money, it's actually really, really rare. And people do it really for the love of it and the fun of it.
Tash is the person responsible for undertaking the AgriFutures research project mentioned earlier, the one investigating barriers to racehorse adoption. From the survey and interview results, her team will then develop a national strategy for rehoming thoroughbreds. She says that with 700,000 horse owners nationwide, it's not that surprising that there are some people who are not as enamoured with the breed as she is.
Some people will have had bad experiences with thoroughbreds and they'll be like, I'll never have another one again. And that's what we want to really drill down into, how those experiences have affected them and whether they're experiences that we can change. So things like the behavioral stuff. So thoroughbreds have a reputation for being reactive, but there are certainly things you can do to train those horses to be better. And the majority can be completely retrained. They really can be. If given the right sort of the time and the food and the training. So how to support owners in doing that, how to support new owners in getting that help, and also just promoting the thoroughbred for their great values. Thoroughbreds are mostly handled from the day they're born. So they're fabulous at the everyday stuff like catching them, shoeing them, just putting their gear on, all of that stuff. They usually just stand around waiting for you to get your act together, right? Because that's what they do at the races all the time. They get on floats. So they're very experienced and used to those sorts of exposures, I guess. So so promoting that, but also to provide support for those issues where they might need that help. And just we don't know everything that the survey and interviews will expose. So that's what we're really looking forward to finding out as well.
Retraining's part of it. What are some of the really simple things in that process? Because when you say retraining, it sounds like quite a comprehensive thing, and it might take a while, but it can be as simple as just a tweak to the diet, can't it?
Absolutely. So, and again, I think you need to take into account the different types of owners. So someone like me, I'm older, I'm getting back into riding, I lack confidence. So for me, I would pay a professional to retrain my horse for 3 months, so that I could get it to that stage. And I'm extremely lucky in that I ride at a place that has a lot of ex-race horses. I only ever ride the thoroughbreds because they're the ones that are tolerant enough to put up with me, because they've all been through this sort of proper retraining. They're fantastic. The first thing I would always think for any thoroughbred off the track is to have a few months off, because they've changed from a completely different routine and moved into a completely different scenario, whether that be that they're just going to be hacking around a farm or whether they're going to go into, serious competition training. And that also relates to the diet as well. So, racehorses are basically fed energy plus some roughage. because energy in is energy out. So you need them to have as much energy as possible. And obviously we want to turn that around and give them more of the energy from the roughage. And that actually takes physical time for the bacteria to develop in the gut, to be able to use that roughage properly. It can take up to a year for a racehorse to get used to living, say, for example, in a paddock.
It's not just about finding a home, it's finding the right home, and that
Absolutely.
every rider, whether it's the local Gymkhana club or riding for disabled, they have different needs, just those two groups altogether, don't they?
For sure. And the worst, a bad rider can ruin a great horse just as quickly as an excitable horse can destroy the confidence of a rider as well. So it's really important that the two fit together and that they're suitable for that the horse is suitable for what the rider wants to do.
Pending the findings of the research, the project will launch a communications campaign to tackle the barriers to adoption of thoroughbreds post-racing and promote their suitability for a range of owners, and in so doing address concerns about the racing industry's social licence to operate. Here's Caitlin Smith from AgriFutures again.
Social license is one of our key challenges in the industry, whether it's racing or breeding. We're a very circular industry, one relies on the other. So in terms of ensuring that we do have enough homes for our retired thoroughbreds, that we are, ensuring this is a priority is a really important piece of the breeding industry. Because without the racing industry, we don't have breeders. So the marketing campaign will very much be developed simultaneously as the plan develops. And then once it's ready to go, which will be around the Autumn Racing Carnival in 2026, it will be rolled out to industry stakeholders. So first and foremost, they're our key audience in providing them with tangible, practical outcomes and strategies to improve that demand for retired thoroughbreds, and then also actually targeting non-thoroughbred industry participants. So proving that the industry is really serious about making practical changes. And I think this project really emphasises the industry's commitment to welfare and social license. We know it's one of our sticking points and something that will continue to be at the forefront. And I'd say we can't ever rest on our laurels, but this is a great step in the right direction, and it also is a great step in showing industry collaboration across all the principal racing authorities, as well as breeders and the entire racing fraternities.
And although the research project isn't yet complete, the industry is already taking proactive steps to break down misconceptions about racehorses. November 20 to 24 marks Australia's first ever National Thoroughbred Week. It's an event that's been held in the UK since 2021 as a way of providing the general public with a behind-the-scenes look at how racing horses are raised, trained and cared for throughout their life. Here's Tash Hamilton again.
The National Thoroughbred Week, I think, is a way for the industry to become transparent to those people that are external to the industry. So we can say to everyone that horses love racing and that we love our horses, but that's not really showing what the industry really is. And so the National Thoroughbred Week is where we open the doors and people can come and visit a number of different businesses around Australia. And they can see all the different things that go on with the horses. So they can see for themselves how the horses live, how they're looked after. And then if they're also interested, they can look at other parts of the industry. So regulation of the industry and how race clubs are run and what goes into running what is actually a very big and very professional industry it's not always apparent to those outside. There is a really big disconnect between people and horses. So, when I grew up, you could go for a fairly short drive and you would see horses in paddocks, whereas most kids in the cities don't see horses at all. So this is also an opportunity to bring them into that, into the horse areas within either the city or even an opportunity to go to the rural areas where the horses are bred as well as trained. So just to open up that other side of the industry there.
We started this episode with a statement about the kindness of thoroughbreds. So we're going to close with this story from Lisa to prove just how true that is.
This year, I was diagnosed with a very large tumor on my thyroid, and it all came about very, very well. I say very quickly. I mean, I've been looking for a diagnosis for a long time, but once they found the tumor, I was diagnosed on, say, the Thursday, and I was in for surgery on the following Tuesday. So it all happened very quickly at that point. But because we have the centre here, and we have a huge team of staff and a huge team of horses, I really had to focus on just getting everything organised here, not just for when I went for surgery, but I didn't know whether I was going to have chemo or radiation, or what my treatment was going to look like after the tumor was removed. So I was so busy and focused on getting everything organised here for being away for an extended period of time afterwards, that it hadn't really hit me what my diagnosis was. And the morning of the surgery, I went out to see one of my horses, Lainey, who's a beautiful grey thoroughbred. And one of the things, actually, also when I'm in session, or some of our therapists have been in session with the clients, is that quite often the clients will lie down for the horses. And I've never had a horse approach me in a paddock and lie down in front of me for whatever reason. But that morning I went out into the paddock, and I just sat in the middle of the paddock because I needed a breather. And Lainey, actually, this horse of mine, came over and he just lay down beside me. And that moment for me was almost like, oh God, this is what everybody gets. I get so task focused because I'm running the business that I often forget what the horses actually bring for me, just the horses themselves. And it really hit me about, what the horses actually offer us, because it allowed me just time to breathe and really take in what my diagnosis was and what happened. And I felt very alone at that time as well. Like, there's that saying that you can feel most alone in a room full of people. And even though I was surrounded by such lovely people, I just felt very alone. And because I was able to process what happened, I had a very big cry and a cuddle with him. And it's the feeling that I got was that I felt supported in that moment, and I felt like I wasn't alone. So I was able to walk away from that, cuddle with my horse in the paddock. And, I kind of went into hospital going, okay, well, actually, this is going to be all right. I'm going to be fine.
I genuinely wish we could just end the episode right there and leave you to contemplate the beautiful relationship between horse and human. But I do need to tell you two final things. First, if you want to go behind the scenes and take part in National Thoroughbred Week, it runs from November 20 to 24, and you can find out more at thoroughbredweek.com.au. And lastly, all those wonderful racehorses wouldn't be what they are without their favourite energy food, lucerne. Next time on Unearthed, we're confronting a major challenge facing Australia's lucerne and fodder crop industries. What to do about herbicide-resistant pests, including blue-green aphids and red-legged earth mites. New AgriFutures research has some startling findings which will make you sit up and take notice. That's next time on Unearthed, the podcast all about the people changing Australian agriculture, brought to you by AgriFutures Australia.